Welcome to the Healthy Heart Show, where we pull back the curtain on conventional medicine and dive into the root causes of cardiovascular health. If you are concerned about high cholesterol, high blood pressure, heart attacks, stroke, or atrial fibrillation, this is the place for you. We will provide natural heart information that will help you prevent, treat, and reverse any ailment, leaving pills and procedures out of the picture. Here are your guides to holistic heart health, board-certified cardiologist and Amazon best-selling author, Dr. Jack Wolfson, and natural heart doctor, naturopathic physician, Dr. Lauren Lattanza. Good morning and welcome to the Healthy Heart Show, where we strive to get everybody to their 100-year heart, talking all things cardiovascular wellness. I am your host today, Dr. Lauren Lattanza, naturopathic physician here at Natural Heart Doctor. We have an excellent show lined up for you today, talking all things endocrinology, thyroid health, which all circles back to cardiovascular wellness. A great guest for you today. We have Dr. Guillermo Ruiz, and he is a graduate medical student from the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. His aim is to use research to advance naturopathic medicine as an evidence-based approach and focuses on finding evolutionary connections between our modern and traditional healthcare systems. He currently practices naturopathic endocrinology in Arizona, where he specializes in metabolic optimization. His hobbies include research, learning, practicing, and teaching the benefits of adhering to an appropriate evolutionary diet. Dr. Ruiz sits on several boards of directors for ancestral and evolutionary diet and lifestyle, as well as the board of multiple supplement companies. His approach is very focused on an appropriate diet for humanity, supplementing where needed and medicating as warranted. He believes that lifestyle change is the single best approach that a patient can take in order to see their best wellness outcome. So much to come from you. Welcome, Dr. Guillermo Ruiz.
How's it going? It's going to be so difficult to keep it professional, because I know you as Laura and you know me as Guillermo,
I know
We've been
it.
friends for a while now, but now we are Dr. Ruiz and Dr. Lattanza.
I know. And if I remember correctly, you said since I knew you before you were a doctor, we get to call each other on a first name basis. So
that is correct. That is correct. It's such a crazy, journey, just to, now to be helping people, that's it. Ever since I've known you, this is the dream, to be able to connect to people at a more personal level and, share our ideas and in the end, helping people, and that's what we're here for.
Absolutely. Definitely full circle. And I've always learned so much from you as a, personal friend and a mentor, all one and the same, really. And so I'm just so happy to have you on the show so we can really talk more than just over coffee as standard. But
I know it's like, yeah, I got my coffee.
I've got mine here too. So we'll just play it as normal then.
Yeah.
All right. So again, we wanted to really touch on thyroid. You are my go-to expert when it comes to thyroid health. So really happy to have you on the show here because it, while it's not, first and foremost cardiovascular, everything is always connected. So definitely wanted to bring this in and, even the cardiovascular patients out there that might be thinking, oh, I don't think I have any thyroid things going on. Well, you just might. So I encourage you all to listen to what Dr. Guillermo has to say here. So something that we see a lot and we hear about a lot, but maybe patients don't know a lot about, if you could just provide some insight as to what is autoimmune thyroid disease?
Well, there has been a lot of, we've been highlighting our metabolism lately, and the importance of having a good metabolism. Sometimes our metabolism goes a little bit rogue and it starts attacking itself, or, not its metabolism, but it starts attacking the body. And we can see different iterations of this. You can have like rheumatoid arthritis where it attacks your joints. You can have autoimmune diseases where it attacks the liver, like in lupus. But the most common autoimmune disease that we have in the United States is actually autoimmune thyroid disease. Okay, so that's where your body confuses itself, and starts attacking the thyroid and destroying the tissue within the thyroid. Funny enough, good, we stand on the shoulders of mentors, and in reality, I wouldn't be here for if it wasn't for all the help of all the people that have helped me and taught me, and picking, pearls of information here and there. I remember talking to Dr. Profrock, another, amazing naturopath, and we have an epidemic of absence. We have an epidemic. There's a book called An Epidemic of Absence that it talks about how we live in such sterile environments, and our first interactions with microbes, or with, are whenever we see a pathogenic encounter. So we clean everything and we disinfect everything, and then we go to a restaurant and we have some bad food, and the first interaction that we have is with something like salmonella, with a virus or a pathogenic bacteria. And talking to Dr. Profrock, who does a lot of really cool things, he was talking about how he helps kids with autism, and one of the prescriptions he gives the parents is to go get some organic dirt, and allow their kids to play with dirt. I know, and it's so simple, in having that interaction with those microbes and eating some dirt, and helps train the immune system not to overreact. And that's what we're talking about right here. It is good to have a well-rounded immune system, one that is not attacking you, and also one that is not under protecting you. So we were talking a little bit about allergies. There are studies where they show kids that grew up in farms have less incidence of allergies and asthma than kids that grew up near factories, or their parents were in more industrialized cities, because there is no interaction with pollen, there is no interaction with fur and all of these things. So then our immune system receives those things, and they trigger this immune reaction, thinking, oh my goodness, we're dying, we're being attacked environmentally, and we have an overreaction. So what do we do in naturopathic medicine for things like this overt immune reaction? Well, we have really cool plants. I do a lot of studies with plants. The first study on the modulation of mast cells, meaning something that helps you have less of a reaction against something, came out of Dr. Paul Mittman, who is another mentor of ours, the president of the school. He wrote it for Planta, and it was trying to show how stinging nettles, the freeze-dried stinging nettles, can help, modulate the action of the immune system. So what happens with the thyroid? When we have a little bit of a reaction towards something, and there has been some proposed mechanisms for things like EBV, and the molecular mimicry that happens with EBV. Yeah, you have a reaction to EBV. Your immune system reacts to this EBV. It goes rogue. Epstein-Barr virus, for people that I'm not familiar with that acronym. It starts attacking the thyroid tissue. Okay, then eventually your body kind of settles that virus, and that virus is out of your system and it's gone. But the tissue on your thyroid stays, and it continues attacking it, So, there's a lot of talks about like, oh my goodness, there is, I had EBV and now I have hypothyroid disease. And then they do an IgG test for EBV. And that IgG test, turns out to be really high. And then, practitioners start treating the EBV that was never there as a root cause, and completely forget their immunology lessons from medical school, completely disregard the thyroid, and then people suffer, so that's in a nutshell. Autoimmune diseases, when your immune system goes rogue, whether it was because you have a food allergy, because you have sensitivity towards wheat, intestinal permeability plays a part, viral infections play a part, but we're not trying to treat that directly. We're trying to treat the autoimmune response towards the thyroid. Now, as root cause, we should reverse intestinal permeability. We should try to control our immune system so we don't have other autoimmune concerns, but as a baseline, we need to help save that thyroid tissue.
Absolutely. And like you said, there's so many different, contributing factors, be it viral, be it dietary, what have you, that can just really stimulate the immune system, and then it turns on itself.
Yeah.
And I love that you say the metabolism going rogue.
Yeah.
So how could a paleo diet help with this autoimmune thyroid picture?
Well, so an autoimmune paleo diet, even a paleo diet, or deviating in any way from a sad diet, it's like, I know you guys, in your practice, you're pretty paleo, and I love it. I have been doing a paleo diet since 2010. I've been in this, for a very long time. But when it comes to being healthier, anything that deviates from a standard American diet is going to be healthy.
Yes.
And then, there are various limitations to all these different diets. And it turns out that a paleo diet is so customizable. And so, according to any, person, that it ends up being, the perfect diet. And people will roll their eyes, because eating a standard American diet with, trans fats and very, and wheat and inflammatory things, is going to wreck intestinal permeability, open up the gut-brain axis, cause a lot of autoimmune concerns, and deviating from that to, let's say, a vegan diet, let's say you are, reducing, meat for health reasons or whatever, but now you're not going out and eating at fast food places. Now you're not, sure, you might be eating a lot of sugar now, a lot of fructose and tons of problems with oxalates and things like that, but it's better than the standard American diet. It's not optimal, but it's better, So then, let's say you have someone that says, I have autoimmune concerns. I want to try a paleo lifestyle, but I have diabetes. Well, a paleo diet, is macronutrient agnostic, meaning that if you have problems with diabetes and you need to have a low carbohydrate paleo diet, go for it, and you follow the same rules, which are anti-inflammatory foods, you just switch your fuel intake, and instead of eating, 150, 200 grams of carbohydrates, well, you just increase your protein and decrease your carbohydrates and continue, let's say you have a high charging athlete that needs a ton of carbohydrates. Well, you can do that. You can continue doing a paleo diet and you just modify the carbohydrate to protein content. Let's say you have someone with problems with their kidneys and they need to have a short-term protein sparing fast, or a low protein diet. Well, you can change the micronutrients in a paleo diet and reduce the protein, and then increase fats and carbohydrates, with a big caveat, that I've been doing a lot of research and my own personal education on kidneys and protein, and I think we got that story wrong, and I don't think that that it's going to pan out in that way. And in the end, eating enough protein to sustain biological functions is going to be first and foremost the most important thing that we can do for our bodies.
I agree with you, and I often will kind of pitch the idea of a paleo diet to a new patient that it's like, okay, where do I begin? I don't want to just eat bacon all the time. And it's so much more customizable than that. Like you said, it's not just one size fits all. And so I appreciate you giving those examples, because it's, yeah, it can be low carb, it can be low carb, high fat, it can be high protein. So it's, varies dependent on patient needs, patient's preferences, and kind of tailored to whatever you want it to be. So I appreciate you breaking that down for us. What are some maybe of your favorite sources of carbohydrates in a paleo diet that isn't a sweet potato? That's where
So, so it's so funny, there are studies that show, okay, that after a certain amount of triglycerides being produced by, in your liver, there is some damage to the pancreas,
mm-hmm.
to where you are not producing, so you have like an alteration in the production of insulin. Mm-hmm. So you become a little bit, you have a little bit of insulin resistance. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or a little bit of insulin production, problems. And I've always known that I work better on a lower carbohydrate diet. So like right now, I'm only eating around 20 grams of carbs. Mm-hmm. And all of my carbs come from vegetables. So I'm eating like metric tons of cauliflower. One of my favorite recipes right now is I take a cabbage and I quarter it. And then I put some umami, mushroom powder and some cayenne pepper, salt and pepper. And then I put a little bit of water and put it in the oven for like 45 minutes. And it's delicious, delicious, especially if you put butter over it, it's so delicious, but I've been doing this cycles with really low carbohydrate, diets, really high protein, and moderate amount of fats. And it all started, okay. And this is a cool story. It all started around March of 2020. I don't know if you remember something really happened around that time. I don't remember. I forget now, but the world changed, and I never lost my job. I don't have any kids, I live a pretty chill lifestyle, but I think the way of isolation, the way of the world, got to me. Okay. And that was enough for my thyroid to break.
Oh.
Yeah. So funny enough, it's a confluence of things whenever people get diagnosed with hypothyroid disease. Usually the first, most women are diagnosed of having autoimmune thyroid disease after having their first kid. Okay. Oh. So you can imagine, that's a pretty stressful experience. And that's where, your immune system kind of just goes crazy, rogue. It starts attacking the thyroid, and then you become hypothyroid, and you start gaining weight. You feel cold all the time. Your hair starts falling, Well, I don't have any kids, but that was my kid, that was my, breaking point.
Right.
So around March, I start noticing my weight going up. I start noticing my hair falling. Mm-hmm. And now us, medical people, we're chronic hypochondriacs, we are constantly looking for things, and I've been monitoring my TSH since before school. My family has a long history of thyroid disease, and my TSH always wavered between 0.89 to 1.15, Mm-hmm. So I checked it again, okay, and it was 1.89. Mm-hmm. Okay, so very, like so close to that range, or within the range, but I was full blown having all of the symptoms, So then I was like, okay, so something's going on. At one point last year, I was running around the parking lot in the middle of the summer because all the gyms were closed or whatever, trying to lose weight. I was eating like 800 calories a day, and I got to 183 pounds. Okay. And I'm telling you,
what's your normal?
Well, as of this morning, I was 146.
Okay, so that's
yeah,
significant.
146. So 40-pound difference, when I started medical school, I was 155.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, and I wanted to graduate at 155. And the day of graduation, I was 155,
Awesome.
So I've been having, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I have like surgical precision with my weight. I let go and my weight goes up, and then I go, okay, it's time to, to go back and eat. And it was like, okay, I'm just going to cook at home and that's it. But it was such a cool experiment because I was not going to a restaurant. I was cooking every single one of my meals. And my weight kept going up, So I was like, okay, there's something wrong, So I ran my antibodies. Sure enough, antibodies were through the roof. And I was like, okay, I need to start taking some thyroid medication. So start taking thyroid medication. And boom, the weight started falling, like nothing. All my symptoms got better. All of a sudden I was a morning person again. All of a sudden, mental clarity, all of the things that people have been telling me they have, all those symptoms, I was experiencing those, now, there's a lot of talks about, or there's a lot of, suppositions that you cannot do a low carbohydrate diet if you have hypothyroid disease. Okay. And on and off, I've used low carbohydrate diets to help people. So I wanted to see if it was possible to do a low carbohydrate diet while taking thyroid medication. And sure enough, if you plan your diet and if you do it correctly, you will be able to do a low carbohydrate diet, and I think to bring it all back from this long rant, I think the least common denominator being, as long as it is an autoimmune safe, a paleo diet, you will be able to do a low carbohydrate diet. And when I'm talking about a low carbohydrate diet, I'm not talking about low carb pizza and low carb muffins. I'm not talking about paleo pizza and paleo muffins. I'm talking about eating unprocessed food and, getting the highest, the most, the highest sources, the most clean sources that I can afford.
Right. Yeah. Whole foods. If I regularly say, you can't look at it and tell what's in it. So a paleo pizza, you're like, this could be any amount of different flours. I have no idea. You can't tell what you're looking at. It's a slew of ingredients that you're not in control of. So maybe reach for something else.
And a paleo pizza, it's nice to have. It's something, because I don't want to live my life counting carbs,
Right.
I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm going to tell all the people that are listening, right, if they're not bored out of their minds, the reason why I'm doing this at this point. Okay. And I'm not sure when this is going to air, but the reason I'm doing this at this point, and the reason I'm trying to, lower my weight at this point, is because we have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas, we have New Year's coming up. And I do all of this. I measure my carbs and whatever because I love to have fun, and during that time period, I want to be able to enjoy a drink. I want to be able to, to have, my paleo stuffing, with, crap flours and high, really, but it's delicious, so I'm trying to set myself up to enter the holidays at a lower weight, so I can go through the holidays without having to care. I am expecting to gain weight and then pick up right where I left off on January 1st, when everyone and their mom is ready to do a diet or to try
everybody
to
signs back up at the gym.
Yeah, and there are studies, there are studies that show that what ends up happening during the holidays in the United States is that we gain around 8 pounds. Okay, we gain 8 pounds, and then we do all these efforts to try to lose it, and they peter off around March, and then we end up losing 5. So we're +3. So then they go, we come around to next Christmas and we gain another 8 and we lose 5. And that's why we keep seeing our weight go up year after year. And most of our weight gain happens around the holidays. Yep. Funny enough, in Israel, that weight gain happens around Easter. It doesn't happen, but it's the same thing. We're social creatures. We like to be around other people. And when we happen to be around other people, we tend to have really nice dinners.
Right.
And so I'm preparing myself for that, for that period, so I can continue being, at a certain weight, that I like to be.
Yeah. And not gain that 3-pound trajectory annually.
And then pile up, because if anyone, if anyone's listening and they ask me, what is the one thing that you would do for autoimmune disease, for cancer, for cardiac health, for Alzheimer's, for, losing weight, and it sounds very trivial, it sounds, but not being obese reduces all-cause mortality.
Yeah.
However you achieve it, there are better ways. There are always better ways. There are better ways of getting your micronutrients. There are better ways of, reducing inflammation or whatever. But if you have a family member, if you have, a friend, if you have that they're not into all of this stuff, and, trying to convince them to do anything, as the first step, like get the first hit, and lose a little bit of weight, that is going to improve outcomes for all cause mortality. Right. After that, once they get to a stable weight, maybe now we can start introducing organic foods, and we can, start introducing, but at the very beginning, at the very least, being overweight and eating a paleo diet, you still have some work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be sort of radical for these patients that come in and they are obese, or maybe they're listening and they're like on a standard American diet. And it seems just, again, so radical to just shift to this all organic, paleo, low carb. So it's like, take it stepwise if you must, but really doing healthy weight loss to get you in a healthy weight is going to reduce all cause mortality.
And we're victims of social media, and we're victims of survivor bias, and we're victims of of like you see it, you see it on Sunday night football, and it's like, oh, so and so overcame this and overcame that, and and they are, you can do it too. If I can do it, you can do it, and in reality, those people are gifted, those people are gifted to have good metabolisms. I enjoy doing endocrinology because I see endocrinology as the nexus between lifestyle and physiology.
Right.
So some people have excellent physiology and they start doing the lifestyle stuff, and the gears connect and things happen, and last year, when I was telling you around March of 2020, I was doing the lifestyle, but my physiology was not there.
Right.
So having hypothyroidism reduces your metabolism in such a dramatic way, okay, that I was eating around 900 calories a day and gaining weight.
And running around a parking lot in the middle.
Running around the park. I hate cardio. I hate cardio. I look back and I roll my eyes. It's like, there are people that love working out. I think you're one of those people. And I work out because I have to. It's like I know it's necessary for my health, but I am like 30 minutes in the gym. I go into the gym, I lift, I do heavy lifting, and then I get out, and that's it. I check it off my chore list. So for me to do that, there's a commercial going around right now where is this girl, and it's like the voiceover, "Why do you run?" And she's like on full outfit running around the streets, and the tagline is at the end is like, "I run so I can drink my beer." And that is so insane. Why is it insane? Okay. first of all, these devices that we have, that track our calories, they're so calibrated in such a weird way that they overestimate the amount of calories that you're intaking in order to make you feel better. If you put an athlete that is super lean, has into a machine, that they're not trained on, and they start running, every single fiber of their muscles is going to fire, and they're going to burn way more calories than us mere humans.
Right.
So then they calibrate that machine, and then they tell us, oh, if you go on the elliptical for 20 minutes, you're going to burn 600 calories. So now you input it into your device, and then you go have 600 calories. Okay. And if you have a good metabolism, if you're one of those freaks, like Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, you are going to burn it, and that's it, but if you're a mere human, just like me, or worse, your metabolism is not working and you are hypothyroid, and you think that you are isocaloric. No, my friend, you are going to be so overcaloric, and then you get frustrated, and you're like, why is this not working? So now you are going to the gym and doing more exercise, counting calories, and maybe the deficit that you need with the metabolism that you have is 400 calories a day. And who can survive with that? No. So basically, being able to optimize your metabolism first and foremost, that is the best way of optimize everything downstream, including your immune system, your weight, your health in general. Right.
Yeah. And then that kind of takes us to the whole, so it's when you talk about physiology and then endocrinology, and they work, simultaneously, you kind of got to have both. And then it has all these downstream effects. So it's not just weight loss. So can we just kind of touch on how does your thyroid and thyroid hormones affect your cholesterol levels, which might put a light bulb over a lot of our listeners' heads, like, oh yeah, that might be me.
And we suffer from from confirmation bias, so sometimes, I see patients that come in and they're like, well, my cholesterol is, 220. Okay. And I've read a lot that, and it tells me I shouldn't be concerned. I was like, oh, okay, cool. But then I have patients that come in and they're like, my cholesterol is 450. And, but so-and-so says that, and so-and-so says that. Once I start getting cholesterols above 280, I start scratching my head. And I start thinking, okay, so this is not good. Having low cholesterol is no good. There is a very cool, study that shows a U graph, and I think the sweet spot is between 220 and 240, and that's when all-cause mortality is lower. And then if you get below 180, all-cause mortality goes up. If you get above 280, all-cause mortality goes up. So this is where you need to start looking into root cause. If your cholesterol levels start creeping up, that is something that we need to pay attention. Because did you know that the first test for thyroid function was actually a cholesterol level? So they would, like around 100 years ago, when we didn't know about thyroid stimulating hormone, they would draw your blood, and if they saw cholesterol, they would prescribe you thyroid. So I started looking, and there is a link with HMG-CoA reductase, and how thyroid stimulating hormone, helps with increase that, or inhibits the HMG-CoA reductase, okay, which is the same mechanism as a statin. Okay. The problem is that statins don't do anything for your thyroid and your metabolism. In fact, they inhibit mitochondria, and they cause more problems than they help. But if you address the thyroid, okay, then you can help both the cholesterol levels and your metabolism. You know, I'm even when I do a low carbohydrate diet, I have to be very careful with my lipids. My lipids go up really, really fast, you know, and so I modify my low carbohydrate diet. I only use monounsaturated fatty acids. I try to avoid saturated fatty acids, and that's to keep my lipids looking phenomenal, you know, to where I can print my labs and show them to any doctor, and they're going to be like, yeah, you're pretty healthy. Mm-hmm. But if I eat like coconut oil, if I eat, you know, a lot of saturated fatty acids, my cholesterol begins to creep up to the 260s, 280s, you know, and I just don't like that, you know. So very easy, you know, for me, I just avoid saturated fatty acids. You know, I cook
like red meats and so on.
Totally. In the way that I see it, Lauren, is that, you know, when those particles are intrinsically within the fibers of muscle, you know, our body knows what to do with them, you know. But when you're eating a refined product,
right?
You know, just like imagine a world that was completely backwards, you know, and Susan Summers was not against fat, but against sugar, you know, and we, you know, in the 70s and 80s, we demonized sugar, and, you know, we would be in the same situation talking about sugar. Mm-hmm. And we would be like, yeah, you know, we've been demonizing sugar for so long, you know, don't eat, you know, refined sugars, you know, but we kind of like take things and run with them, you know, and a lot of products, you know, that we consume can increase your cholesterol levels, you know. My girlfriend doesn't have that problem. Mm-hmm. You know, she can eat saturated fats in the form of butter, in the form of coconut oil, in the form of lard and stuff like that, and doesn't affect her lipids. Mm-hmm. You know, I accumulate, and my theory is that, you know, I'm Mexican, you know, my ancestry is from the equator. Mm-hmm. And ancestrally speaking, you know, evolutionarily speaking, we don't have a lot of access to saturated fats. Yeah. You know, maybe avocados and you know, and coconuts, you know, but not refined, you know. Nice. So my ancestors, if they were able to get a hold of some saturated fat, you know, their bodies would kind of like hold on to them really, really hard, because saturated fats are very necessary for the good production of other hormones like testosterone, you know, estrogens, progesterones, you know, cholesterols, you know, all of that. So if I give my body an unlimited amount of saturated fat, my body kind of is like, yay, and it just holds on to it really hard, pushing all of those metabolic pathways. Yeah. So I gotta be careful with my fueling of fat. Where if you have someone from, you know, more from the poles, you know, where they have, you know, access to the saturated fats in the forms of, you know, blubber and you know, seal fat and even dairy, you know, their metabolism is so used to having a steady stream of saturated fats that they just get rid of it like nothing. You know,
everybody knows what to do with it.
That it knows what to do with it. So, you know, so yeah, it's sad that, you know, I can't, you know, cook everything in butter, you know, it tastes delicious, but it's such an easy fix for me, you know, and I use saturated fats more as a seasoning, you know. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, you were talking about sweet potato, even a regular potato, you know, you make a regular potato and just put like some fat on top of it to make it taste better, rather than cooking everything in fat.
The Healthy Heart Show will be right back after we take this quick break to hear from our sponsor. Would you like to drink great tasting coffee that's also good for your heart health? Cardiology Coffee is your answer. This 5-star rated coffee is delicious. It's a gourmet coffee that begins with whole organic beans, hand-selected and carefully roasted. It's tested and certified to be free of pesticides, mold, and other toxins. Cardiology Coffee is great for your heart, and you're going to love how it tastes. Order now online at cardiologycoffee.com. Now back to the Healthy Heart Show. Yeah, and I like that you kind of touched on the fact that low carb does not mean you're doing a ketogenic diet. Low carb does not mean heaping pounds of lard and fat on top of everything and avocado, everything. You can do low carb and still moderate your other macronutrients.
Well, let me put it this way, and we see this with a lot of people taking exogenous ketones, So what is ketosis? Okay, ketosis is the ability of your body to burn fat to create energy. Okay, and then we create these ketone bodies that are present in our breath, in our, in the urine, in our blood, and that helps fuel, as alternative pathway. So what is ketosis? Burning fat. Okay. If you are hypocaloric, eventually you're going to burn fat. Okay. So you can eat 500 calories of rice a day, and you will eventually start creating ketones. Okay. Because why? Because you're undercaloric. 500 calories of rice is not enough. Even if it comes from 100% straight carbs, eventually you're going to start burning fat. So you can be in ketosis by eating nothing but rice. Okay. Now, what is, the way that I practice a ketogenic diet, it's not adding fat. It's actually reducing carbohydrates. Okay. And the biggest problem that I see with things like exogenous ketones, okay, is that when you take exogenous ketones, you're artificially elevating the amount of ketone bodies that are circulating in your bloodstream. Right. So I ask my patients, and I ask anyone that's listening right now, what would you rather do? Burn the fat that you consume or burn the fat that you're wearing?
Right.
Okay. And in order for us to get to the fat that we're wearing, which is what everyone wants to burn, you cannot give your body more fat and push to burn that. No, there is a hierarchy of the way that we burn things in our body. The first thing that we get rid of is alcohol. Alcohol is toxic, and we take a lot of effort, to get it out of the system as fast as possible. I love bourbon, but sadly, we have to be aware, if you want to lose weight, probably the first thing that you should eliminate is alcohol. After that, it's very easy to burn carbohydrates. So then your body starts burning carbohydrates. After that, then the body starts burning fat. And finally, contrary to what popular belief is, we burn protein. Protein, the body is not stupid. The body is wise, and protein is essential for many things, including integrity of the heart, muscles, and whatever. And as a last resort, we will start burning protein for energy as a last resort. Right. Okay. So let's, if you're eating a meal and you have, a beer and you have some fries and you have, a burger, with some cheese. It sounds delicious, actually. The first thing, in the hierarchy of things, the body is going to go crazy and it's going to try to, get rid of that alcohol. So those calories are gone. Then the carbohydrates. Okay. And then at the end, all the fat that is included in the fries, that's included in the meat, that is included, so the body's like, okay, we've satisfied the caloric intake for the day. Let's store this, and then you begin to store things, So if you want to lose weight, reducing carbohydrates to jump those two steps, the first step being alcohol, the second step being carbohydrates, and then concentrating on burning fat can be very beneficial. And if you want to expedite that, eating leaner cuts of meat and, and just using fat to kind of round things up and make things taste good, and be able to adhere to diet, that can be very useful. The problem is that we see a lot of people having, I'm going to have this coffee and I'm going to put some MCT oil. And that MCT oil is going to help with some cognition, and there are reasons why to do it if you want to do it for therapeutic ketosis, But if you're trying to lose weight, those extra calories are just getting on the way. you know. So reducing, you know, or maintaining an acceptable level of fat, and not just add fat. Keto, you know, a ketogenic diet does not mean adding fat to what you're eating. Right. It's not eating eggs covered in lard and bacon. No, it would be, you know, maybe reducing the carbohydrate intake at each one of the steps of your meals, increasing your protein, and using fat as a lever to kind of help you with your energy intake.
Right. Yeah. And because fat is so incredibly satiating, you can kind of use it as a condiment, but it's so incredibly satiating because it is a massive amount of fuel. So are you intaking fuel, or are
you know, it's funny, you know, that satiating myth, you know, the most satiating food on the planet is potatoes. Like, and there are charts that show you what is the most satiating thing, you know, per gram. Eating potatoes is the most satiating. There's a book called The Potato Diet, and it's, you know, you do 5 days and you eat nothing but potatoes and you lose weight. Again, there's many ways to skin a cat, you know. Right. Fat is not that satiating. I'm gonna prove it to you. You know, what is more satiating? You know, 100 calories of raw spinach or 100 calories of olive oil.
Mm-hmm. Which size comparison?
Yeah, in 100 calories of olive oil, I can just take. Yep. You know, that's a tape, and that's it. You know, it's gone. You know, now there is some truth to it, okay? Because being ketosis, producing ketone bodies, causes a little bit of nausea, mm-hmm. which in itself helps reduce hunger. You know, but the densely packed calories from fat, you know, cannot override a lot of satiety sensors, mm-hmm. you know. So if it, you know, so yeah, so there is some truth where, you know, where if you are in a ketogenic state, you're going to produce more ketones, and that itself causes a little bit of nausea, and that is anorexic in itself. You know, it reduces your hunger, but in reality, you know, I'm a paleo guy and I'm doing a low carbohydrate diet. I love ketogenic diets and everything. Fiber is more satiating than fat, and protein is more satiating than fiber or fat, you know. So those are like little things that we hear there and we pick up here and there, you know, but if you look at the studies and if you look at the tables of satiety, you know, in reality, there are things that you can do to help with your hunger that are less caloric intensive, because in the end, you know, and I would have fought myself 10 years ago, mm-hmm. calories do matter, you know. You know, believe it or not, you know, in the end, calories do matter. And the idea, you know, especially when it comes to weight loss, is what is the diet that is going to be satiating, that is going to be enjoyable, okay, and that is going to allow you to spontaneously reduce your calorie intake for long periods, for long periods of time, to where it's going to allow you to lose some weight. Like, for example, you know, a lot of people do like a shake in a meal, you know, like a protein shake for breakfast, a protein shake for lunch, and then a meal at night. That would makes me ravenous. That, you know, just
angry.
Drinking protein in the morning, that's it. For the rest of the day, it's open for business. I'm hungry, you know.
Something to chew on.
Yeah. Some people do, you know, I'm an intermittent faster. I love to intermittent fast, you know, and if I don't eat anything, I can go, you know, until dinner, OMAD, 1 meal a day without any problems. The problem is that if you don't have that meal frequency, then your hormones begin to suffer. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know if we have any time, but I have a quiz for you, you know, around how many calories does it take for a guy to produce sperm?
Oh, geez. I would say at least like 600 a day, 800.
It's 150 calories per ejaculate.
Okay.
Okay. How many calories does it take to create a baby?
150 calories.
No,
For a woman.
Yeah.
A lot more than that.
75,000 calories. 75,000 calories of this over the span of 9 months. Okay. So 2 things out of this. Okay. Thing number 1, most of the people that do great with intermittent fasting are guys.
Yep.
You know, I do phenomenal, you know, and as soon as I start noticing, cortisol or adrenal problems, the first thing that I reintroduce is breakfast, because the peak of health is fertility. Mm-hmm. And anything that goes against fertility is going to decrease metabolism, is going to decrease hormones, thyroid, testosterone, all of that. Right. It's going to increase cortisol. Okay. So intermittent fasting is a stressor. Okay. And as long as you are doing calorie restriction with appropriate nutrition, CRAN, meaning you are meeting all of your micronutrients and calories, you can buffer that suppression of hormones. Women, on the other hand, don't have the luxury of just eating an apple and be ready to procreate, but a lot of the people that are big loudmouths like me on social media talking about intermittent fasting, we're guys. Right. And there's not a lot of women out there, my clientele, my patients, 90% are women, and they're coming to me because they heard this and this guy saying that intermittent fasting, it's not working for me. I'm gaining weight. My thyroid is being suppressed. So I'm going to do it harder. So now you're giving your body a daily reminder that you're in starvation mode, right, which your body notices and is like, okay, let's start suppressing calories because she's not ready to procreate.
Yeah, and then we have missed periods.
You miss period. What happens when you are super lean? You go into amenorrhea, no periods, So meal frequency, specifically in women, can be life-changing, especially in someone that has had problems, with intermittent fasting, because it suppresses your hormones. And you don't have to eat 500, 600 calories per meal. Just giving your body a signal that, hey, dude, it's okay. We're not starving. Having a little bit of protein, having some vegetables, with some consistency up until your body is at peak level. And then you can introduce that stressor to help you with whatever, I call intermittent fasting, my superpower. I don't have to stop and make breakfast. Mm-hmm. It's amazing, and work through lunch. I've been, super, trying to eat lunch every day, just a tiny little bit, and then a heavy dinner. And the reason I make sure I have a lunch, because I could go all the way until night without eating, is because I don't want to go into that starvation hormone, problem, So meal frequency is probably one of the first things that I reintroduce as, if I feel like I'm too stressed out.
Yeah. Moral of the story, keep your women fed.
Yeah, and listen, being able to fast is also a signal of health. You don't want to be dependent, right, on having to eat every 4 hours or every 6 hours,
Yeah.
But using it as a tool, like if you were at an airport, that's like the best example, okay, so I'm going to be at the airport all morning long. I'll just eat whenever I get to wherever I'm going. And that way you avoid, crappy food and, blah, blah, blah.
What can you eat that's healthy at the airport? Yeah.
Yeah. So you can use it as a superpower, and being able to go the whole morning without eating, without crashing. And, that is a signal of metabolic flexibility.
Absolutely, which is the goal.
Yeah, which is the goal. The problem is when we abuse it, and because fasting is a stressor, just like exercise is a stressor, And this use stressors, if you use them correctly, you can gain muscle, you can get lean, you can, but if you abuse them, eventually they stop being eustress and they start becoming really bad stressors that can sink you even further into your metabolic disruption.
Right. Okay, so I wanted to touch on this. I thought this was an interesting topic of conversation. So what are some pros and cons of the thyroid, and where does functional medicine tend to get it wrong?
So I love our generation, and I'm a little bit older than you. But I think that the next generation of people that are interested in health, we are so practical. I tell my patients, that during their funeral, you're dying before me, so it doesn't matter. So I'm going to be there and I'm going to be crying, oh my God, Lauren, she never took any Advil, like no one's going to talk about how many pills you took, no one's going to talk about that. People are going to be talking about, how you treated others, how you, were you there for them? How many patients you healed? How many people you were there, for mommies that are listening, that no one's going to remember how many prescriptions you picked up at the pharmacy. People are going to remember, your kids are going to remember the times that you stayed up all night taking care of them, so we're so practical, and that's how I look at it. So if I have to take a little bit of thyroid medication, okay, and that allows me to be there for my patients, to if there's a problem and I have to stay up all night. Funny story, my dog got into something last night and she woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, at 6 o'clock in the morning, and had, diarrhea and vomited twice, and yeah, I'm not 100%, but I feel 99%. And one more good night of sleep and I'm going to be back to 100. It would be really, I don't know if I can curse on this, but if like what if, if I was trying to get off of thyroid medication and I have to have a perfect diet and perfect circadian rhythm and maybe avoid caffeine and, and all of those things, like imagine telling your kid or me telling my dog being like, sorry, dude, I got to protect my circadian rhythm, so I'm just going to open the door and let you, let you outside and I'll do your thing. And no, no. So these little things that I do, this like eating organic, eating, grass-fed meat, taking my thyroid medication is so I can do two things: be there for my loved ones, okay, and enjoy life. Like I said, I enjoy bourbon and I like having a drink every once in a while, so what's the point of living, if you want to be 100% clean 100% of the time in order to maybe, perhaps, get off of a tiny little pill that you take in the morning. Right. I tell my patients, okay, you want to get off of thyroid medication. Okay, you're probably going to have to sell your house. If you like your husband, move to Costa Rica. If you don't like him, divorce him. Give away your kids for sure. And then farm coconuts and fish. And go to bed at 9. Wake up at 5 in the morning with the sun, and maybe you might be able 9 months out of 12, you might be able to not take your thyroid medication. Or you can continue married, you can continue doing what you love. You can continue, watching stupid Netflix shows every once in a while. You can, and the only thing you have to do is take that little pill in the morning, so we put so much stigma because we have to take a prescription. But in the end, no one's going to care in your funeral. They're going to remember you. I don't think that life should be measured by the amount of supplements or medications that we take, but the amount of love that we live with, that we give others.
Right.
you know, and that's self-love, you know, enjoying things, you know, going to a concert every once in a while, being there for your loved ones, and you know, and all of the things that we can do in order to make this world better.
Right. Everything in moderation. But yeah, ultimately, like we said before, we are a tribe civilization, and we thrive best with others. And when we're isolating and have this orthorexic approach to life, then that's not really welcoming others into
You
it.
know, do you really want to live the rest of your life like that? You know,
Yeah. And
you know,
those that have the willpower and the drive and the tribe that supports all that, I applaud them, because
yeah,
not
you know,
everybody.
and yeah, and there are people, you know, there are people that, you know, that, you know, another problem that I see in functional medicine, you know, it's like when people kind of like focus on free T3 and free T4,
Mhm.
and then furthermore into like reverse T3. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that and your thoughts on
Yeah, because, you know, for example, you know, free T4 and free T3 are snapshots of what's going on right there at that point when that needle, you know, entered your vein and they took a sample of your blood. Okay. Most people, when they get their free T3 and free T4 tested, they go in the morning and they don't take their thyroid medication, which means that free T4 and free T3 levels are going to be low. So then you take your labs to your practitioner and they see the L, okay, and they're gonna, oh my goodness, you need more thyroid. Meanwhile, their TSH is perfect, their thyroid stimulating hormone,
Mhm.
which is a more stable predictor of what's going on with your thyroid over 4 weeks.
Mhm.
Okay. Another thing that I see a lot is people trying to dose their thyroid medication according to reverse T3. Okay. Are you familiar with sex hormone binding globulin?
Yes.
So sex hormone binding globulin is a protein or a globulin, you know, that binds testosterone and estrogens and stuff like that to make them inactive, and it's produced by the liver. Sometimes if you have a lot of liver, you know, problems, you start creating more sex hormone binding globulin, and now your hormones are going to suffer. And that's a protective mechanism to prevent you from getting pregnant or to prevent inflammation in general. You know, reverse T3 was studied, you know, because people in the ICU, if they have sepsis, the reverse T3 would just skyrocket. Okay. Thyroid, and utilizing thyroid creates a lot of proteins and creates a lot of reactive oxygen species. And in someone that has sepsis or an infection of their blood, they're creating a lot of reactive oxygen species.
Mm-hmm.
And having thyroid being processed and creating more reactive oxygen species kind of sends you down into that inflammation hole even more.
Right.
So the body starts creating reverse T3 to try to quench some of that inflammation. If you take too much thyroid medication, you will see your reverse T3 go up. Mm-hmm. Because your body is trying to, you know, first your TSH notices that you're taking, that you have too much floating T3 and T4. Second, your reverse T3 starts to go up to try to quench it. In late stages of hyperthyroidism, we see the free T3 and free T4 levels go up. And that's because all of the buffering mechanisms in the body are tapped out. And now you're starting to accumulate reverse T3, reverse T4.
Right.
Yeah, or sorry, free T3 and free T4. So I see a lot of patients that are taking elephant doses of thyroid medication. Their hair is falling, they have anxiety, or worse, if you keep tapping at that thyroid, that thyroid hormone, what happens? Your body becomes resistant to the hormone, and now you're going to present with hypothyroid symptoms, even though you have a whole lot of too much thyroid. Mm-hmm. In a similar fashion with what happens with insulin resistance. So what's insulin resistance? You have so much hormone insulin. Insulin is a hormone circulating to your body, pushing all that glucose into the cell, creating a lot of reactive oxygen species that your body says, okay, if we don't do something about this, we're going to burn up.
Right.
So it cuts down the receptors of the GLUT4 receptors so that insulin doesn't go in. The same thing can happen with the thyroid. If you keep taking higher and higher and higher doses of thyroid, eventually your body becomes thyroid resistant. Yeah. So then you go to your doctor, you present all the symptoms of hypothyroidism. They look at your labs and they ignore the TSH and they say, well, your reverse T3 is high. So I guess a little bit of thyroid made you feel better. A whole lot more is going to feel better, and you keep increasing and they keep going and they keep increasing. And eventually you end up with such high levels that you either go into hyperthyroidism or you present with thyroid resistance symptoms.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So we just encourage the problem by encouraging more and more.
Totally, by not, and that's where we can talk about root cause, So first, being more practical, let's change the diet. Let's support thyroid, okay? And let's reduce your thyroid medication to a level that is within the functional levels for TSH, allow all this excess oxidation to get out, and then look at why is it that fixing the thyroid didn't help you. Once your TSH is where it needs to be, then we can move on.
Right.
Is it intestinal permeability? Is it adrenal fatigue? Is it, circadian rhythm disruption? What is it? What's underneath it? But, just throwing thyroid medication and, adding more thyroid, that's not the solution.
No. Okay, well, you've provided us with a wealth of knowledge, and I think a lot for myself and all of our listeners to think about, and always gain so much from listening to you. But before we wrap it up, I want to ask you one more question, and maybe you've answered it kind of throughout the last hour or so, but just to wrap it up, how do you live a heart healthy life?
Well, again, I think that first and foremost, enjoying what I do. Mm-hmm. Heartbreak is real, like people do die from heartbreak, and life's too short to not do what you just love, and our responsibility as doctors is encouraging people to live a healthy life, but also practicing it. And that's something that, I'm always biohacking. I'm always, trying things, I've done it all. Intermittent fasting, fasting mimicking diets. I've done low carb. I've done low fat. I've done it all. And in understanding that there are things that work for me that might not work for my patients, like intermittent fasting, and then believing in our patients. Yeah. I really hate the cynicism of, and you've heard it, from, and you hear in school and things like, oh, if a patient says that they only smoke 1 pack a day, they actually smoke 2. Or if they tell you that they drink a 6-pack a week, it's more like 24. No, I think that in the sanctity of the room where we see our patients, I believe my patients,
yeah.
And that's, and if I trust that I believe them, then I can help. And that helping in the end is what, helps my heart.
Yeah.
And, and fills my heart, because at the end, I always knew that I wanted to be a doctor, and having those success stories and having those emails and those conversations where the patient is like, I finally got to do X, or they're proud with their progress. That to me, above organic food and above, good sleep, and I've got, I think that's what heals my heart.
Oh, I love that. Yep. Instilling hope is far and above the best part of, I think, our job.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Hope. That's a great word. That's a great antonym for cynicism.
Yes,
Hope.
I would agree.
Hope. Yeah.
All right, Dr. Guillermo, always such a pleasure. Tell our listeners where they can find more of you, what you do, and learn more from you.
Well, you can follow me at 3030 strong, 3030 strong. And pretty active on social media. My practice is at GoHealth, ATGO Health. And I have all the handles on Insta and Facebook. And, we do some Facebook lives every once in a while. I need to get back on my podcast. I haven't released a podcast since last year because of, reasons,
Yes.
But yeah, so, just if you have any questions or anything, just, shoot me a DM. I'm always around on social media if you have any questions.
Awesome. Well, we will share all the links so patients can learn more from you. So as always, thank you so much for your time. Always good catching up with you. And it's been too long, so let's not let that happen again.
Oh yeah, no, we need to do dinner soon.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Healthy Heart Show. And I hope you all have a great day. That does it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Healthy Heart Show. Please help us get the word out by liking and subscribing to our podcast and our Facebook page, Natural Heart Doctor. Please show support for our podcast sponsor, Cardiology Coffee, your resource for organic, antioxidant-rich, mold and pesticide-free coffee shipped straight to your door. Learn more by adding @cardiologycoffee on Instagram and visiting cardiologycoffee.com. This podcast provides materials for information and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. We encourage you to contact your physician for any of the health issues discussed here.